They came from beyond the starfield, creatures born from the darkness, carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Commander Drezak had never seen anything quite like these humans, whose tenacity was almost mythical among his people, the Urani. He stood on the command bridge of the warship Voidclaw, his crimson scales glinting in the cold light of his monitors, each screen displaying the approach to Zaran 3, the Urani's next target in a galaxy that had never dared defy them. Yet, something about this system had unsettled even the most hardened warriors in his fleet. Reports from scouts described massive installations in orbit around each planet and strange signals radiating from them in an unbreakable code. But to Drezak, a high-ranking warlord of the Urani Dominion, humans were no more than a new species to be subdued, a fleeting struggle in their endless conquest. He watched the view screen with calculating eyes as the human star system, designated by Urani maps as Zarkal, loomed closer. Zaran 3's pale blue hue cast an eerie glow across the fleet. "Commander," called one of his officers, an agitated murmur in her voice. "Our intel has underestimated their reach. We're detecting colonies on 4 planets and a moon." Drezak's claws flexed against the command chair. His curiosity piqued. "So these humans are not the primitives we believed?" he murmured, a hint of excitement lacing his words. "Prepare the void cannons. I want to test these humans firsthand." Within moments, the Voidclaw unleashed the Urani's deadly plasma, a searing beam of energy that could slice through ships and shield alike. Drezak leaned forward, anticipating the satisfaction of seeing the planet's defenses crumble. But as the blast met the atmosphere, there was a flicker on the display, and a flash of retaliatory fire streaked upward from Zaran 3. "Commander!" his officer shouted, struggling to contain her shock. "They're launching a counterattack!" In the distance, swarms of sleek human ships, smaller and faster than Urani crafts, emerged from behind the moon's shadow. Their movements were like nothing he had seen, quick and calculated, weaving through Urani fire with an elegance that sent a prickle of apprehension up Drezak's spine. "Interesting," he muttered, hiding his unease. "Dispatch our fighter wings. Teach them that the Urani are not to be trifled with." But the humans were relentless. Missiles burst forth from hidden silos, striking at Urani ships with ferocious precision. Explosions lit up the dark expanse of space as Drezak's fleet endured their first significant resistance in over a century. The monitors showed the Urani's sleek black ships under a brutal barrage, their shield cores straining under the relentless assault. Drezak's jaw clenched. "Engage full force! Crush them!" he commanded, his voice a low growl. Yet even as his words echoed through the bridge, the humans seemed to anticipate every move, striking where his forces were weakest and retreating just before Urani fighters could respond. His officers exchanged anxious glances as more reports of heavy losses filled the screens. At last, Drezak's anger reached a boiling point. These humans, these strange, stubborn creatures, had proven themselves far more formidable than he had ever expected. There was no question now. They would need to face the humans up close. "Prepare the ground forces for planetary descent," he ordered. "If we can't bring them down from the sky, we will shatter them on the ground." His claws scraped against the armrests, the adrenaline and frustration intertwining within him. "Send a transmission to their command. Let them know we are coming." The humans had put up a spectacular defense, but to Drezak, the real hunt was only beginning, the battle for Zaran 3. The descent to Zaran 3 was unlike anything the Urani had ever experienced. Commander Drezak's dropships sliced through the planet's atmosphere like daggers, each packed with Urani warriors eager to crush these resilient humans. The dense jungle below stretched like an emerald carpet across the horizon, masking the human fortifications hidden within the dense foliage. Drezak's taloned fingers tapped impatiently on his plasma rifle as he watched his troops land, the dark jungle concealing their movements. But as the dropships touched down, a heavy silence filled the air. Not a single human soldier stood in sight. Drezak's gaze swept across the dense trees, noting the unnerving calm. "Advance in formation," he ordered, his voice a low growl that echoed in his troops' helmets. "The humans are playing at something." The Urani warriors spread out, their powerful legs crushing vegetation underfoot as they stalked forward. Plasma rifles were held at the ready, their glow illuminating patches of the jungle in eerie green light. The humid air was thick, the sounds of native creatures merging with the quiet clanking of Urani armor. A few cautious steps later, the silence shattered. Hidden sentry guns erupted from the trees, pouring bullets and laser fire into the Urani ranks. The initial wave of soldiers scattered, diving for cover, but many were hit before they could react. Drezak's heart raced as he saw his warriors fall under the hail of human firepower. These weren't the disorganized primitives he had imagined. They were tacticians, strategists who understood how to exploit terrain. "Return fire! Focus on the sentries!" Drezak roared, his voice amplified through the comms. Plasma bolts tore through the air, striking the hidden sentry guns, but for every turret they destroyed, another seemed to rise in its place. And then came the soldiers, clad in dark, hardened suits, their faces obscured by reflective visors. Human marines, disciplined, well-coordinated, and fearless. The human forces struck with ruthless efficiency. For every Urani squad that pushed forward, a human ambush cut them down. The battle turned into a twisted game of hide and seek, with Drezak's forces growing more frustrated and desperate as the humans seemed to predict every move. Drezak himself took to the front lines, his plasma rifle blasting through the underbrush, determined to show his troops that their commander wouldn't hide while they fought. At one point, he caught a glimpse of a human soldier darting between the trees. Without hesitation, he charged, his weapon leveled at the human's back. But just as he fired, the soldier ducked, rolling into a crouch, before unleashing a devastating spray of bullets that forced Drezak to dive for cover. The human disappeared into the shadows, leaving Drezak seething. "They're toying with us!" one of his officers shouted, panting as he took cover beside him. "These humans fight with a patience I didn't think they possessed." Drezak cursed, frustrated beyond measure. He knew his forces were running low on ammunition, and morale was fraying. The jungle's oppressive heat weighed on them, but the humans seemed to move as if the elements were in their favor. At this rate, even with superior firepower, the Urani would be worn down before reaching the humans' main base. As dusk approached, Drezak called his remaining officers together for a grim discussion. "We need to change our strategy," he said, his voice betraying a rare vulnerability. "The humans are whittling us down, using tactics we don't understand. We have to adapt." An officer pointed to a holographic map of the terrain, outlining the human stronghold nestled within a series of fortified ridges. "If we could infiltrate their base, capture their leader," the officer suggested, trailing off as he considered the risk. It was a desperate plan, but desperate plans were all they had left. They moved under the cover of night, slipping through the dense jungle and evading the humans' perimeter defenses. By now, Drezak's once mighty forces were a scattered handful, every warrior's allies reflecting the weight of exhaustion and loss. But as they neared the human stronghold, a sense of determination filled Drezak. They were Urani, after all, warriors bred for conquest, hunters who never faltered. Suddenly, the silence shattered again, but this time it was not the humans who struck first. Drezak's remaining forces fired on the perimeter guards with precision, catching them off guard. In moments, they breached the base's outer gates and pressed onward, driving toward the command center with a fervor born of desperation. Drezak himself led the charge, adrenaline and rage propelling him forward. Yet as they burst into the base's main chamber, they found something unexpected. In the middle of the room, standing defiantly behind a makeshift barrier, was a single human officer, his expression calm, his stance steady. His name was Captain Reyes, and Drezak sensed immediately that this was the leader who had orchestrated the relentless human resistance. "Welcome to Zaran 3, Commander Drezak," Reyes said, his voice carrying a weight of cold confidence. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd make it this far." Drezak's lip curled in a snarl. "We have come to conquer, human. Surrender now, and perhaps we'll allow your people a measure of mercy." Captain Reyes chuckled, unfazed. "Mercy? That's rich, coming from a species that prides itself on terrorizing the galaxy. I think you misunderstand the nature of this battle, Commander." As Reyes spoke, a signal beacon in his hand blinked to life, illuminating the room in a cold blue glow. Outside, a series of rumbling explosions echoed through the jungle. Drezak's comlink crackled as his officers screamed of sudden, unseen ambushes, human forces rising from hidden bunkers, cutting down the remaining Urani troops in a fierce counter-assault. "You walked right into our trap, Commander," Reyes said, his voice unyielding. "Did you really think we would leave our stronghold undefended? We've been planning for your arrival for years, waiting for the day you'd be foolish enough to underestimate us." Fury roiled within Drezak, his claws itching to strike. But he knew Reyes was right. The Urani's forces were decimated, scattered by human guerrilla tactics and unexpected firepower. The humans had turned their home into a fortress, a place where every inch of ground was another snare, another weapon waiting to strike. And now, trapped within the heart of their enemy's stronghold, Drezak's realization hit him with brutal clarity. "We may be beaten here, human," he growled, his voice filled with defiance, "but the Urani Dominion will not fall so easily. Reinforcements will come. More will arrive to avenge this." Reyes tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Perhaps," he replied, the beacon's blue light casting a ghostly glow over his face. "But don't be so sure we'll give you the chance." Drezak lunged forward, intent on bringing down Reyes with sheer brute force. But before he could close the distance, a group of human soldiers flooded into the room, weapons leveled, surrounding him in an instant. Drezak's rage simmered, the bitter realization settling in. His assault on Zaran 3 had failed, his pride shattered by the very species he had intended to enslave. As his captors led him away, Reyes' parting words echoed in his mind, a final taunt from the humans he had once dismissed as prey. "Next time, Commander," Reyes called after him, "remember that sometimes the deadliest hunters don't wear scales. They carry steel and fire." The rise of humanity. Days passed in a blur of confinement for Commander Drezak, held in a fortified human prison deep within Zaran 3's jungles. The once proud warlord of the Urani Dominion now sat shackled in a metal cell, his crimson scales dulled by the loss and humiliation. The humans' tenacity gnawed at him. They had bested his fleet in space, decimated his forces on the ground, and worst of all, they had taken him alive. But Drezak's fury was far from extinguished. His claws scraped against the metal floor, his mind churning with thoughts of escape and revenge. He knew the Urani Dominion would not abandon him. Reinforcements were likely already en route, and he could almost see the skies filling with Urani warships, ready to raise Zaran 3 and reclaim their pride. One day, however, his routine of rage and frustration was broken. The door to his cell slid open with a quiet hum, and in stepped none other than Captain Reyes, his expression a mixture of calm resolve and quiet satisfaction. Reyes studied Drezak, seemingly unfazed by the Urani's ferocious glare. "Commander Drezak," Reyes said, his voice calm, "we have a proposal for you?" Drezak snarled, his voice dripping with disdain. "The Urani do not negotiate with prey, Captain. Your words are wasted." Reyes smirked, unbothered by Drezak's hostility. "Perhaps, but I think you might want to hear this one. See, your forces aren't the only ones watching this little encounter unfold. We humans have allies, other species you've left in ruins, conquered worlds that have long waited for the chance to strike back." Drezak's eyes narrowed. "Allies? You mean cowards who cower behind your so-called defenses?" "Not quite," Reyes replied, his eyes cold and unwavering. "The truth is, we've formed an alliance across the galaxy. Species you underestimated, worlds you ravaged, they've all joined us in this fight. And now, with your defeat, they're emboldened. Word of your failure on Zaran 3 has already spread." Drezak's confidence wavered, if only for a moment. He knew that a fractured galaxy could never rival the Urani Dominion, yet the idea of a coordinated resistance fueled by a common hatred was an unsettling one. Even so, he scoffed, dismissing Reyes with a wave of his clawed hand. "Idle threats. The Dominion cannot be toppled by a ragtag coalition of weaklings." But Reyes merely nodded, as if he had expected Drezak's dismissal. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Commander, we've learned your tactics, your weapons, your strategies. Every encounter with the Urani has taught us something new. While you've relied on brute force, we've adapted, and now we're ready for whatever your Dominion sends," Drezak growled, defiance blazing in his eyes. "So this is your grand plan, to intimidate me with words?" "No," Reyes replied, his tone suddenly icy. "My plan is to offer you a choice." A silence fell over the room, broken only by the faint hum of distant machinery. Drezak's gaze narrowed, his interest reluctantly piqued. "Go on then, amuse me." "Here's the deal, Commander. You can leave Zaran 3 alive under a ceasefire agreement and return to your Dominion. You'll warn them that humanity and its allies will no longer cower in fear. But if you return with hostile intentions, know this: we'll be ready. And next time, there won't be any prisoners." Drezak's pride bristled at the thought of surrender, of returning to his people defeated and humbled. Yet the weight of his losses lingered like a shadow, the knowledge that humanity had indeed outmatched him. Perhaps retreating, for now, was the only way to salvage his honor and avoid a total collapse of the Urani's rule. "You expect me to simply accept defeat and slink away?" he sneered, though his voice lacked conviction. Reyes' eyes hardened, his voice low and unyielding. "Yes, I do. Because if you don't, if you attempt to continue this war, we will fight you to the very last. And I promise you, Commander, it won't end well for your Dominion." For the first time, Drezak felt the sting of doubt, an emotion foreign to him and one he despised. But Reyes' resolve was unmistakable, and in that moment, he realized the humans' victory wasn't just in tactics or weapons. It was in their indomitable will. After a long, bitter silence, Drezak bowed his head. "Very well, Captain Reyes, I will deliver your message, but do not think this is over. The Urani will return stronger than before." Reyes offered him a thin smile, filled with the quiet assurance of a victor. "If you do, Commander, we'll be waiting." With the terms of the ceasefire established, Drezak was released. He returned to his ship, his heart heavy with a mixture of shame and lingering defiance. As his warship lifted from Zaran 3's surface, he watched the planet grow smaller, its verdant jungles fading into a distant blue speck. He couldn't shake the feeling that, in their hubris, the Urani had overlooked something vital, that these humans were no ordinary species, and their resilience was something the Urani would do well to fear. As the Void Claw re-entered space, Drezak sent a message to his superiors. The humans had issued a warning. The Urani Dominion's days of unchecked conquest were numbered. He knew the Dominion would be livid, their pride as fierce as his own. But perhaps now, with the galaxy stirring to life against them, the Urani would be forced to face the reality of a universe no longer under their control. In the weeks that followed, reports from across the galaxy confirmed the captain's words. Other species began to rise, inspired by humanity's resistance. The Urani Dominion found itself beleaguered by skirmishes, ambushes, and a growing alliance of defiant worlds. The Urani's chokehold on the galaxy weakened, their fleets forced into an endless game of suppression against those they had once subdued with ease. Back on Zaran 3, Captain Reyes observed the unfolding reports with grim satisfaction. He knew that the Urani's retreat would not last forever. But for now, they had achieved something invaluable: hope. Hope for a galaxy that had long lived in fear of the Urani. Hope that perhaps someday a united force of free worlds would see the Dominion's fall. And on distant worlds, under strange stars and in languages both ancient and new, tales of the human resistance began to spread. A story of those who, against all odds, stood up to the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. If you're still awake, why not let us be your nightly storytellers? Subscribe, and we'll meet here again, ready to guide you into the unknown.